In honor of the last year of the 14 playoff, let's go to the very first year of the 14 playoff, that being the 2014 college football season. At this point, everyone was tired of the BCS. We had the BCS for a while at this point, with other sports like college basketball having 64 plus teams having a chance to win the national title. The BCS system just didn't look that great. Let's go over the final results of the 2014 season, kind of in honor of the 14 playoff, because this in fact is our last year of a 14 playoff. Let's go conference by conference. First, the SEC. The SEC dominated in the BCS era. An SEC team or even two made it to the championship in the last 8 years of the BCS. So in 2014, Alabama was looking to bounce back from being denied a three-peat by Auburn. So this year was really especially wild for the SEC West. There were so many good teams. You had Alabama, you had Auburn coming off a national championship, and then you had the Mississippi schools showing up a big time. Alabama actually got upset early by Ole Miss, led by Chad Kelly. At one point in this early 2014 season, in this early college football playoff committee picking the top 4 teams, week 10 of the 2014 season had number 1 Mississippi State, number 2 Florida State, number 3 Auburn, and number 4 Ole Miss. 3 of the 4 teams was an SEC school. Alabama wasn't even in that top 4. Those 3 SEC teams didn't end up even making it to the college football playoff. Luckily for Bama, things worked out for them. They were able to beat Mississippi State and Dak Prescott. Ole Miss ended up falling out of the top 4, and Alabama went on to face Missouri in the conference championship game, crushed them, and Alabama ended up being the number 1 team in the college football playoff rankings, the final college football playoff rankings of the 2014 season. So we have our number 1 team. Let's go over to the Pac-12. The Oregon Ducks were dominant, led by Heisman winner Marcus Mariota. Mariota won the Heisman this year, and he was the last Pac-12 player to actually win the Heisman. That they really ran through everyone, and their one slip up Arizona, they got to avenge that loss in the conference championship game, blew out Arizona that second time around. Oregon, a really solid year. They had that very quick, fast-paced offense, so they ended up being the number 2 team. Going over to the ACC, we had our defending national champions, Florida State. Florida State was led by Jameis Winston, freshman phenom the previous year, Jimbo Fisher. Frankly, Jimbo Fisher has Jameis Winston, of all people, to thank for his millions of dollars right now that he got from Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher definitely has Jameis Winston to thank, because Florida State was really good during these years. Obviously, the 2013 season, Florida State blew by everybody, finished the season undefeated, beat Auburn in that national championship the season prior. In 2014, they remained undefeated, but unlike 2013, a lot of the games were very close, and it was kind of unexpected. Florida State, looking at like eye test, they weren't exactly the best team eye test wise. The committee ended up actually dropping Florida State to the number 3 spot and put Oregon and Alabama, who both had losses, ahead of them. So now it came down to the final spot. Came down to 3 teams: Big 10 champion Ohio State, Big 12 co-champs Baylor, and TCU. So first, let's go into the Big 12, because this was a very controversial year, and this season actually pretty much made it so that the Big 12 had to have a conference championship game. If you guys didn't know, before all this fallout that I'll explain, Big 12 didn't really have a conference championship. They just kind of played their regular season games, and whoever had the best record, they're the Big 12 champion. Worked out for the most part. This year, not so much. So going into the season, Oklahoma and Baylor were the favorites, but in week 6, TCU came out of nowhere, beat number 4 Oklahoma. So now TCU's on the map. TCU jumped up into the top 10, and they actually had a top 10 matchup with Baylor. This game was one of the best offensive games, one of the best games maybe of the decade, and the Bears ended up winning 61-58 shootout. And now the number 5 Baylor Bears got a big win, looking to maybe win the Big 12. Well, then the very next week, they lost to West Virginia in a big upset. Really a classic case of what I like to call Pac-12 cannibalism, where they're all beating up on each other. But both teams ended up with a 10-1 record going into the conference championship week. As I said before, though, the Big 12 doesn't have a conference championship. They just played regular season games. The committee didn't really like, while all the other top teams were playing a conference championship, Baylor and TCU were just playing mediocre regular season games in the big conference championship week. It ended up that the Big 12 claimed Baylor and TCU co-champs. If the Big 12 had hindsight, maybe they would say, hey, if they didn't have a conference championship, maybe they'd say, hey, let's give it to Baylor because they did beat TCU in that head-to-head. And so in the end, both teams were punished and left out for Ohio State. TCU fell from number 3 to number 6. So let's go to the Big 10. This season was looking to be a big season for Ohio State. They were ready to go. Heisman candidate Braxton Miller, but Miller ended up injuring his shoulder in practice, and freshman JT Barrett had to take over. And then on top of that, Ohio State got upset by Virginia Tech in week 2. So it wasn't looking like a very good start for Ohio State. Ohio State really was not looking like they were going to be even close to the playoff, maybe not even be close to the Big Ten championship game, but they went on under the freshman JT Barrett, won a string of games, made it all the way to the Big Ten championship until Barrett got injured. So then they bring in their third string quarterback, Cardale Jones, and he blew out Wisconsin. I think it was like 59-3, and Ohio State put a statement win for the committee, 59-3, conference championship. They were 12-1. So let's go on to the actual college football playoff, the 4-team playoff. The very first playoff game was actually a blowout. Oregon blew out Florida State, but I think this was actually good because if you think about the BCS probably wouldn't have left out an undefeated defending champion Florida State out of the top 2 like the committee did. And maybe Oregon might not have even gotten a shot at a national championship. In the second playoff game, the Sugar Bowl, number 4 Ohio State upset Alabama. So then you had these two teams facing off in the national championship game, which might not have even been able to face off in a national championship game if the BCS were still a thing. So I would even say the 4-team playoff, based on its very first year, was a success, not only for getting Ohio State in. Ohio State went on to win the national championship, dominated against Oregon, led by Ezekiel Elliott. You had two teams that probably wouldn't have even made it into the BCS National Championship, probably would have just been playing a Rose Bowl. I think this was also good for the committee that Ohio State won this matchup in the very first year, surrounding all the controversy with leaving out TCU, dropping them from number 3 to number 6 in the country. It was good that Ohio State won for the playoff committee's sake. With all that being said, though, I think it's definitely best that we move on to a 12-team playoff. A 12-team playoff with automatic bids, I think, will be very good. You look at the NFL, you have automatic bids. You win your division, you're automatically in. You know, there's an obvious incentive. Obviously, with the NFL, it's a little more straightforward because everyone's playing the same teams. But I think the 12-team playoff will be a bit better now knowing, okay, you win your conference, or if you are the best group of 5 team, you get in. Hopefully, the 4-team playoff walked so the 12-team playoff can run. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.